Are you ready? 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 Ready?
Assalamu alaikum, Siram, and good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Today, before I go into the topic, I got a little perturbed this week. And when I say perturbed, I don't get angry, people. Things kind of aggravate me. And the aggravation came from some of the individuals that are running institutions, big companies, spiritual institutions. And all I have to say is know what your responsibility is. As you see, everybody, this country and all over the world, we're facing a crisis. We're up against something you cannot see, you cannot feel. And I think that's what panics a lot of people. But awareness and following instructions is the best prevention. But I have to relate what I saw and what I've heard to a little topic before we go into the main topic tonight. Do we have shepherds? There's many references in the Bible of people shepherding his flocks. We read, and we are going to read, a few warnings. Here's one from Jeremiah 23:1, which says, "Woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord." Another one, Ezekiel 34:2, which son of man, prophecy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophecies to say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? That's Ezekiel 32:2. We see that in some cases, our worldly shepherds may at times destroy or scatter their sheep. We also read some shepherds care only for themselves and not their flock. But we are promised in Jeremiah 3:15, it states, "I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will lead you with knowledge and understanding." So we see our God shepherd in many times uses people to shepherd his flock. So we read that God will give us shepherds who will lead us with knowledge and understanding. Now let's simplify this a little bit. Now anyone who has ever lived on a farm or read about such things, but people, I was raised on a farm in the United States. We had 1,800 Black Angus bulls at one time. We'd raise them all at one time. When an animal in a herd or flock becomes sick, you separate them from the rest of the flock. This action is to protect the rest of the herd, just as a good shepherd would protect his people. It is the responsibility of a good shepherd of any institution or government or spiritual institution to abide to the instructions given to the public to protect your flock. If you do not adhere to the instructions, then maybe you should think of another career. Shepherds do not think only of themselves and money, but a good shepherd knows that if the flock gets sick, they may end up with nothing. People, all of you out there right now, I want to let you know, at this time, be responsible. You all can pray at home or watch the televised or streamed services just as effective as you can inside your church, temple, or mosque. Remember, God is everywhere. And if you're told otherwise, which I know there's some saying, still come to church, call us at 354-4459. And we'll try to talk to them, because that is not being a shepherd. Everyone in this world and every country at this time needs to become a good shepherd. Take the responsibility that has been installed upon you, that has been given by the authorities, and ensure that people around us abide, and ourselves abide to the instructions given. Me and family had a talk before we even started this program today. And we're amazed at what we're seeing as we're coming to work. There's still people in big, quite a few groups. Why? Think about it, people. It is not worth it. Be aware, be smart, and act accordingly. Now tonight we have a very in-depth program. And tonight's topic, which kind of falls in line with this, but this is going to go on for a couple weeks. The topic is human search for God. During thousands of years of mankind's history, humans are searching for God, which has led down many, many pathways. The result has been the enormous diversity of religious expression found worldwide, from the endless variety of Hinduism to the monotheism of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, also to include Oriental philosophies of Shinto, Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. In other vast regions, humans have turned to animism, magic, spiritism, and shamanism. Has this search for God been successful? Regardless of where you live, you have no doubt seen for yourself how religion affects lives of millions of people, maybe even yours too. In countries where Hinduism is practiced, you might often see people doing puja. That's a ceremony that may include many different offerings to certain deities. And they might give in the form of coconuts, flowers, fruits, parasad, sweet rice, just to name a few. A pundit, which is a Hindu priest, may apply a spot of red, white, or a yellow tiki to the foreheads of the believers. Millions and millions of Hindus each year will flock to the river Ganges to be purified by its waters. In Catholic countries, you will see people praying in churches and cathedrals while holding a crucifix or a rosary. The beads of the rosary are used for counting prayers offered in devotion to Mother Mary. It is not difficult to identify the nuns and priests, distinctive in their black garth. In Protestant lands, chapels and churches abound on a Sunday or sometimes Saturday. The members of the congregation usually try to put on their best clothes and congregate to sing hymns and hear the sermons. And often, the clergy will wear a suit with a clerical white collar. In Islamic countries, you hear the voices of the muezzins, the Muslim criers, which calls the azan 5 times a day, summoning the faithful to the salah, which is prayer. They view the Holy Quran as the Islamic book of scripture. According to the Islamic belief that the Quran was revealed by God and given to the Prophet Muhammad by the angel Gabriel around the 7th century. On the streets of many Buddhist lands. The monks of Buddhism, usually in saffron, black, or red robes, are seen as a sign of piety. Ancient temples with the serene Buddha on display are evidence of the antiquity of the Buddhist faith. Practiced mainly in Japan, Shinto enters into daily life with family shrines and offerings to their ancestors. The Japanese feel free to pay for the most mundane things, even success in everyday goals. Other religious activity known all over the world is that of people going from house to house and standing on the streets with Bible and biblical literature, with magazines and evidence. Nearly everyone recognizes these people as the Jehovah's Witness. What does this great worldwide variety of religious devotion indicate, everyone? That for thousands of years, humans had a special need and yearning. Man has lived with his trials and burdens, his doubts and questions, including the enigma of death. Religious feelings have been expressed in many, many different ways as people has turned to God or their gods, seeking blessing and peace. Religion also tries to address the great questions. Why are we here? How should we live? What does the future hold for mankind? Have you ever found yourselves thinking these questions? On the other hand, there are millions of people who profess no religion, nor any belief in a God. They are atheists. Others, agnostics, believe that God is unknown and probably unknowable. However, that obviously doesn't mean that these people are without principles or ethics, any more than professing a religion means that one does have them. However, if one accepts religion as being devotion to some principle, strict fidelity or faithfulness, pious affection or attachment, then most people, even including those atheists and agnostics, do have some form of religious devotion in their lives, whether they admit it or not. So many religions in the world, which the world is getting smaller and smaller by virtue of ever faster travel and communication. The impact of various faiths is felt worldwide, whether we like it or not. And I want to prove something to you. The outrage that broke out in 1989 over the book called The Satanic Verses, written by what some people termed as an apostate Muslim, is clear evidence of how religious sentiment can manifest itself on a global stage. Do you know there were calls from the Islamic leaders for the book to be banned and even for the author to be put to death? What makes people in the world so extreme in matters of religion? To answer that, we need to go back and we need to know something about the background of the world's religions. As Godfrey Perander states in the World Religions, from the ancient history to the present, to study different religions does not need to imply that infidelity to one's faith, but rather it may be enlarged by seeing how other people have sought for reality and have to be enriched by their search. Knowledge leads to understanding, and understanding to tolerance of people with a different point of view. So the question is, why should we investigate? Why should we look at other backgrounds of religions? Have you ever thought or said, I have my own religion, and it's a very personal matter to me. I don't need to discuss it with others. That's true. Religion is a very personal, but virtually from birth religious or ethical ideas are planted in our mind by our parents and relatives. As a consequence, we usually follow the religious ideals of our parents and our grandparents. Religion has become almost a matter of family tradition. What is the result of that process? That in many cases others have chosen our religion for us. It has simply been a matter of where we were born and when. It is reasonable to assume that the religion imposed at one's birth is necessarily the whole truth. If you were born in Italy or South America, then without any choice, you were raised probably as Catholic. If you were born in India, then likely you automatically was born into Hinduism. Or if from Punjab, perhaps maybe even a Sikh. If your parents were from Pakistan, then you would be obviously probably a Muslim. And if you were born in a socialist country, over the past few decades, you might even be raised as an atheist. In many countries now, everyone, owing to immigration and population movements, people of different religions share the same neighborhood. Just like here at home in Trinidad and Tobago. Therefore, understanding another's point of view can lead to a more meaningful communication and conversations between people of different faiths. Perhaps, too, it may dissipate some of the hatred in the world that is based on religious differences. So true. People may strongly disagree about their religious beliefs, but there is absolutely no basis for hating a person just because he or she holds a different viewpoint. Let me refer to 1 John chapter 4, verse 20. It states, "Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or a sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen." Think about that, people. It's a very deep statement. The ancient Jewish law stated, and I'm going to quote, "You shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your countrymen. Let your fellow and love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord Jehovah." That was from Leviticus 19, verses 17 and 18. The founder of Christianity stated, I quote, "But I say to you who are listening, continue to love your enemies, do good things to those hating you, and your reward will be great. And you will be the sons of the Most High, because he is kind towards the unthankful and the wicked. That was from Luke 6, verses 27 and 35. Also, under the heading she, that is to be examined, the Quran states the similar principle. From the Surah 60, verse 7. It may be Allah to bring about friendship between you and those whom you hold as enemies. And Allah is powerful, and Allah is forgiving, merciful. While most religions have a body or beliefs or doctrines, these can often form a very complicated theology beyond the understanding of the simple man or simple woman. Yet the principle of cause and effect, as we spoke before in many other programs, applies to every case. The teachings of a religion should influence the personality and the daily conduct of each of its believers. Thus, each person's conduct will normally be a reflection, to a greater or lesser degree, of that one's religious background. What does your religion have on you? Does your religion produce a kinder person, which is more generous, honest, humble, tolerant, and compassionate? Just look around you and watch. And also look at yourself. Have you changed? Are you learning in your belief? Or are you really inside still yearning for that knowledge? Are the people helpful, caring, loving, just to name a few, outside of the place of worship? Look, listen, and learn what is happening around you, everyone. These are just reasonable, simple questions. For as a great religious teacher once said, which is Jesus Christ, he stated, "Every good tree produces fine fruit, but every rotten tree produces worthless fruit. A good tree cannot bear worthless fruit. Neither can a rotten tree produce fine fruit." Every tree is not producing fine fruits. They get cut down and thrown into fire. Really then, by their fruits you will recognize those men. That is Matthew 7, verses 17 through 20. Certainly, world history must give us pause and make us wonder what role has played in many wars that has devastated mankind and caused untold suffering. So why so many people killed and been killed in the name of religion? The Crusades, the Inquisition, the conflicts in the Middle East and Northern Ireland, the slaughter between Iraq and Iran in 1980 to 88, the Hindu and Sikh clashes in India. All these events, everybody, certainly make people raise their questions about religious belief and ethics. The realm of Christendom has been noteworthy for its hypocrisy in this field. In 2 world wars, Catholic has killed Catholic. Protestant has killed Protestant at the behest of the Christian political leaders. Even though the Bible clearly contrasts the works of the flesh and the fruitage of the Spirit. Regarding the works of the flesh, the Bible states, they are fornication, uncleanliness, loose conduct, practice of spiritism, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, contentions, divisions, drunken bouts, revelries, and other things like these. As to these things, I am forewarning you, the same way as I did forewarn you, that those who practice such things will not inherit God's kingdom. Yet so-called Christians have practiced these things for centuries, and their conduct has often been condemned by the clergies. And that was referenced from Galatians chapter 5, 19 through 20. So before we proceed on, why do different faiths and beliefs condemn and ridicule others and judge them? First of all, I have a question to all of those who do it. Who in this world gave you the ultimate authority to judge? People need to practice what they preach. The Bible clearly states, thou shalt not judge. So is it that those words don't apply to you who is judging? Think again. This is what's happening every day all over the world, even here in the beautiful country of Trinidad and Tobago. We will go over this even more in depth in the next program. Let's just move in contrast. The most positive fruitage of the Spirit is described as love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faith, mildness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. All religions ought to be producing this kind of peaceful fruitage. But do they? Does yours? If religions is the expression of man's belief and reverence for a superpower recognized as the creator and governor of the universe, as one dictionary states, then surely the question should be, is my religion and my actual place of worship good enough right now for the creator and the governor himself of the universe to be present during our service? Only you can answer that, everyone. You see what's going on. The history of religion is as old as the history of man himself. That is what archaeologists tells us. Even amongst the most primitive, that is to say, undeveloped civilizations, there is found evidence of worship of some form. As far as scholars have discovered, there has never existed any people, anywhere, at any time, who were not, in some sense, religious. Now, we're talking from the beginning of mankind. Besides, in its antiquity, religion also exists in great variety. Let's even go further than what we did before. The headhunters in the jungles of Borneo, the Eskimos in the frozen Arctic, the nomads of the Sahara Desert, the urban dwellers in the world. Every person and every nation on earth has its way of worship. The diversity in religion, people, it is truly staggering. And when you start to learn about it, it's unimaginable of what you'll see. Logically, questions come into mind then. Like, where did all these religions come from? Since there are so many marked differences, but also what we found, there's a lot of similarities among them. Did they start independently, or could they have developed from one source? In fact, we might even ask, where did religion begin at all, and how? The answers to these questions are of vital importance to all who are interested in finding the truth about religion and religious beliefs. When it comes to the question of origin, people of different religions think of names such as the Prophet Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius, and Jesus Christ. In almost every religion, if you start researching everyone, we can find a central figure to whom credit is given for establishing what they all call a true faith. Many of them have left behind writings or sayings that formed the basis of a new religion. In time, what they said and did was elaborated and even given a mystic aura. Even though these individuals are considered founders of the major religions that we are familiar with, it must be noted that they did not actually originate the religion. In most cases, their teachings grew out of existing religious ideas, even though some of the founders claimed divine inspiration, and nowhere are we saying in this program they didn't. Or they changed or modified religious systems that was not successful in one way or another. For example, let me give you an example. As accurately as history can tell us, the Buddha had been once a prince who was appalled by the suffering and the deplorable conditions he found himself surrounded with from the society that was dominated by Hinduism. Buddhism was the result of his search for a solution to life's agonizing problems. Similarly, Prophet Muhammad was also highly disturbed by the idolatry and the immorality he saw in the religious practices around him. He later claimed to have received special revelations from God, which they call Allah, which formed the Quran and become the basis of a new religious movement, which is called Islam. Protestantism grew out of Catholicism as a result of the Reformation that began in the early 16th century when Martin Luther protested the sale of indulgences by the Catholic Church at that time. Thus, as far as the religions now in existence are concerned, there's no lack of information regarding their origin or development, their founders and their sacred writings, and so on. But then we have to ask another question. But what about the religions that existed before them? Here comes another question. And what about the ones that even existed before those? If we go far back enough in history, we will sooner or later be confronted with the next question. How did religion begin? Clearly, to find the answer to that question, we must look beyond the confines of our own individual religions. And when you do, people, I clearly stated earlier, that does not compromise in what you believe. I want you to believe in what you believe. After years of struggling with the issue, many have now come to the conclusion that it is most likely that there will be a breakthrough in finding the answer to the question of how religion began. First of all, this is because bones and remains of ancient people doesn't tell us how those people thought, what they feared, or why they worshiped. Any conclusions drawn from these artifacts are just educated guesses at best. Second, the religious practices of today's so-called primitive people, such as the Australian Aborigines, are not necessarily the reliable gauge for measuring people of ancient times, what they did or thought. Interestingly, among legends common to many religions is one that says humankind began in a golden age in which man was guiltless, lived happily and peaceful in close communion with God, and was free from sickness and death. While details may differ, the same concept of the perfect paradise that once existed is found in the writings and legends of many religions. The Advista, the sacred book of the ancient Persian religion, tells about the fair Yema, the good shepherd, who was the first mortal and with whom Ahura Mazda, the creator, conversed. He was instructed by the creator to nourish, to rule, to watch over my world. To do so, he was to build a vara, an underground abode for all living creatures. In it there was nothing overbearing nor mean, spiritedness, neither stupidity nor violence, neither poverty nor deceit, neither punishment or deformity, neither huge teeth nor bodies beyond normal measure. The inhabitants suffered no defilement from evil spirits. They dwelt among trees and golden pillars. These were largest and best and most beautiful on earth. They were themselves a tall, beautiful race. Among the ancient Greeks, Herodotus' poem called Works and Days speaks of the 5 ages of man, the first which was called the Golden Age. When men enjoyed complete happiness, he wrote, the immortal gods that tread the courts of heaven first made a golden race of men. Like gods, they lived with happy, careless souls from toil and pain, exempt, nor on them crept wretched old age. But all there was past in feasting, and their limbs grew no changes. That legendary golden age was lost, according to Greek mythology, when Epiphanes accepted his wife, the beautiful Pandora, and a gift from the Olympian god Zeus was given to her. One day, Pandora, she opened the lid of her vase, and suddenly escaped from it was troubles, miseries, and illnesses from which mankind was never to recover from. That's where, when you hear the term, you've opened the Pandora box, people. That's where it originated from. Ancient Chinese legends also tells of a golden age in the days of Hung Sing Tai, who had ruled for 100 years in the 26th century BC. He was credited with inventing everything having to do with civilization, clothing and shelter, weapons and warfare, land management, manufacturing, silk culture. Similarly, legend accounts of a time of happiness and perfection at the beginning of man's history can be found in the religions of many other peoples, which is Egyptians, Tibetans, Peruvians, Mexicans, and many others. Was it just by accident that all these people who lived so far from each other and who had totally different cultures and languages and customs entertained the same ideas about their origin? Or was it by chance or coincidence that all of them chose to explain their beginnings in the same way? Logic and experience tells us that that could hardly be so. On the contrary, Interwoven in all these legends, there must be some common elements of truth about the beginning of man and his religion. And let's put them all together right now. All these legends we're going to put into one. And then, family, I know I'm cutting short, but I want to start opening the lines. Okay, we're going to put them all together. So, people, if you want to call, you can get us at 612-8255 or 222-8255. When we put them all together, a complete picture begins to emerge. It tells how God created the first man and woman and placed them in paradise. They were very content and very happy at first, but soon they became rebellious. That rebellion led to the loss of that perfect paradise, only to be replaced by labor and toil, pain and suffering. Eventually, mankind became so bad that God punished them by sending a great deluge of waters. Good evening, may I help you?
Pleasant evening, Master.
My friend Bishop, I'm missing you here, Bishop.
I know, but the law is the law. You know, if the rules are, say to keep it that way, we can do that. We can function with that. I was so happy to hear you make that statement this evening, because I had to call a bishop out today, because he is telling the church that they could congregate. But then I felt, my heart felt good when I heard Bishop Bradford saying to the Baptist community that they should obey the law. And that, to me, made my heart glad that he made that statement to the Baptist community. You're speaking about different traditions.
Yes.
And Orisha, Voodoo, and the American Indians have very powerful traditions.
That's correct. And we're going to get in over that more in the next program.
Because you're not studying the practice, and you only want to study, you only want to deal with what the Bible is saying to you, which is really about Israel only. It's not telling you about the Persian traditions that you spoke about. It's not telling you about other practices. And who stop man from these practices? Who give man the authority to stop those practices? Man just do his thing and stop them, but they are powerful practices with results. People get results from them. And I wanted to make that point. I just wanted to make that point tonight.
Well, Bishop, thank you so much for calling, and I hope the situation rectifies to where you can be in here with me.
Okay, thanks. God bless.
Now, everyone, I'm going to take one more minute, and then I want to do something with you. Yes, may I help you? Hello.
Hello, good night.
Good evening.
And family.
Hi, family.
Could you tell me whatever became of Salman Rushdie, the author of Satanic Verses?
Right. What I'm going to do, I'm not trying to push you off. I am covering all that next week, ma'am. I'm going to make sure that everybody understands. I'm going to make sure that everybody starts understanding about where religion began and how it began and how it was filtered down in what we are reading today. It is very important, people. And like I was saying, when you put all the beliefs together, eventually mankind became so bad that God punished them by sending a great deluge of water that destroyed everyone but one family. And in the Bible, they call him Noah. And as this family multiplied, some of the offspring banded together and built an immense tower, which some call the Tower of Babylon, in defiance of God. God halted their construction by confusing them and their languages and dispersed them to the far corners of the earth. Basically, that's the picture that was presented in the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis. People, we are just scratching the tip of the iceberg. But before we leave, we are in a time now. This thing that we call a virus is affecting everyone. Some people say, not me, but it is. You have to watch where you go, watch what you touch, follow the guidelines. But people, Are we tested? I want you to think about it. In times of crisis is when we all pull together. But when the crisis leaves, we tend to snub our noses up in the air and start to go our own way. Why? When I was in the military, don't you think in the battalions that we were in, some of us didn't like each other. We really didn't. But when the time come and we had to fight something, you know we never thought of that? Do you know we all had each other's backs? No matter what we faced in the conflicts that we had to go? And funny enough, afterwards, people did their own parts again. But guess what? Even if we were all liming downtown, if a stranger came up and started harassing one of us in another country, that same person didn't like it. He's standing in front of you. And he's like, if you mess with me, if you mess with him, you got to mess with me. What I'm trying to say, people, everyone out here is their own brothers and sisters. We are no different from each other. And all of us that are in positions or in the government or ministers or presidents of countries or CEOs of companies or spiritual leaders of institutions, be the shepherd. For the last 30 seconds, I want to demonstrate something for you. It's a prayer. And it's from the ancient text. And when I'm done, I will translate it for you. So if everybody in your own way, just bow your head, because this country needs it. This country needs to pull together regardless of who you are. At this time, just stay quiet and listen. Blom bakanay patsut manay haraktikam mania haratpadni pokonay snim porktang paraktamania porostamana porostikilabana porostamin karamano. Everybody, what was just said is I stand before you as helpless and simple. I open my hands and bow before you that you are the Almighty and you can grant the peace and you can give the protection to everyone around us. Please grant thy wish. Everyone,